When my husband died, my daughter claimed the house and $35 million as if I were already gone. She looked me in the eye and said, "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." My chest burned, but I stood tall, refusing to bow to cruelty. Quietly, I placed the lawyer's sealed envelope on the table, a storm folded neatly in paper. They thought it was the end, but it was only the opening line. Before I share the story, I'd love to know, how are you doing today? The sky over Portland was the color of pewter that afternoon, and the air bit my cheeks the moment I stepped out of the car. The funeral home stood small against the restless ocean wind, a modest brick building with frosted windows. I carried myself inside, coat wrapped tight, not because of the weather alone, but because of the hollow in my chest. The scent of lilies hit me first, sweet and sour, mixed with the faint aroma of burnt coffee from the refreshment table. Inside, voices hushed as I passed, casseroles lined up on folding tables like trophies of obligation. People touched my hand briefly, their eyes sliding away too quickly, as if my grief was contagious. A volunteer pressed the printed program into my palm. My fingers felt the weight of the paper before I dared to look. And there it was, like a slap that doesn't leave a mark. The list of survivors read, "Survived by his daughter, Valora Drager and family." My name, erased. His wife of 44 years, gone from the record. I steadied myself against a chair. A funeral coordinator mumbled when I asked. The family provided the copy. "Ma'am," she whispered, glancing at Valora standing near the front pews, surrounded by people as though she were the widow. My throat burned, but I pressed the program flat and smiled at a stranger who offered condolences. In New England, we don't shout about hurt. We stack it like wood and burn it slow. I walked toward the front. Valora glided to me in her fitted black dress, her lipstick sharp against pale skin. She kissed the air near my cheek. "Mom, let's not nitpick today," she whispered, her voice honeyed for the crowd. My neighbor, Orlena Pike, gripped my arm gently. "Do you want me to speak up?" I shook my head. "Not here. Not yet. Dignity is weight, and today it pressed hard, but I carried it anyway." The officiant took the dais, thanking Valora and her family for arranging the service. My stomach twisted. The pew cold beneath me. A few rows ahead, I overheard Lucien Veyrac, my son-in-law, muttering to a man in a Navy suit, "Keys, utilities, and the safe tomorrow." I was sitting there, a ghost at my own husband's funeral, listening to the division of my life as if I'd already been buried beside Thaddeus. When the microphone began to pass for family remarks, I inhaled. Ready. A cousin spoke, then Valora. She smiled through tears and talked of Daddy's legacy and responsibility, painting herself as the torchbearer. I rose when she finished, but her hand clamped lightly on my arm. "Mom, the schedule's tight. We'll share at home." The microphone moved on. The program on my lap cut deeper than any insult. The white space where my name should have been gleaming like a wound. Still, I sat. To beg for a microphone I had earned with decades of loyalty would be to hand her another victory. As Valora posed near the wreath with Thaddeus's initials, Lucien typed furiously on his phone, as if he were trading stocks instead of grieving. Two ladies whispered, "Such a dutiful daughter," and I filed those words away like evidence. Money can buy flowers, but it cannot purchase truth. The service ended. I shook hands, thanked guests by names Valora didn't know, because she had never cared to learn. At the door, Orlena offered me a ride. "I'll drive myself." I told her. A simple sentence, but it steadied me. Valora approached, her smile tight as thread. "We'll talk at the house tonight," she said. Not asking, not inviting. I answered evenly. "We'll talk when I'm ready." Her eyes narrowed. Lucien pretended not to hear, fingers still dancing across his phone. I folded the program and tucked it into my purse. Evidence matters. At the doorway, she leaned close, her breath fogging my glasses. "Mom, we're moving in tonight." The lilies suddenly smelled like bleach. I gripped my house keys, cool metal biting into my palm, and said nothing. Silence can thunder louder than words. The wind off Casco Bay hit like a slap when I stepped onto my porch. The brass chimes Thaddeus had hung years ago clinked against each other. Thin notes swallowed by the cold. My house, the cedar smell from the beams. The brass mailbox, dulled by salt, stood firm, but the warmth inside had already been claimed. Through the window, I caught sight of Valora's coat draped across the banister, a duffel bag half-zipped near the stairs. They had moved in while I was burying my husband. The front door opened before I could turn the knob. Valora stood framed in yellow light, her smile as polished as her black dress. Lucien hovered behind, his phone glowing like a second face. "We'll make this simple," she said, her voice pitched so neighbors wouldn't hear. I slipped off my gloves, a slow motion that steadied me. "Simple. Tell me your plan," I answered, each word balanced. "This house is mine now," she said. "Dad's legacy needs someone capable. You need care." She leaned in closer, her perfume heavy as she whispered, "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." I let silence answer first. It stretched long enough that I could hear the ocean striking the rocks. "Finally," I said, noted. I didn't repeat her cruelty. Let her choke on it later. She reached toward my coat pocket for the keys. I tapped her hand away. Deliberate and calm, "Not tonight." Lucien cleared his throat. "It's late. We can sort the details tomorrow." I held his gaze. "The detail is this: I don't take orders in my own doorway." Inside, evidence of their takeover spread like weeds. An overnight bag unzipped on the sofa. Lucien's briefcase placed on the table Thaddeus had built. On the kitchen island, labeled folders read utilities, insurance, security. Valora moved about like a project manager assigning tasks. "We're helping you," she said smoothly. "You should be grateful." I circled the island, reading each label but never touching. "If someone plans your future without you, it isn't help." I said, "It's eviction in nicer shoes." Lucien's phone buzzed again. I caught the word lock slip from his lips. My heart thudded, but my voice stayed even. The porch light drew moths, and with them, neighbors' eyes. Orlena Pike paused on the sidewalk, holding a tote bag full of Tupperware. Lucien stepped outside, pulling 2 crisp bills from his wallet, 200s, and pressed them into my palm. "This should cover a motel," he said, avoiding my gaze. I let the bills rest in my hand as though they burned. Orlena's face flushed. "Eudora, I can drive you," Valora interrupted, loud enough for the block. "We've got it handled." I set the money back on the console table. Flat and neat. Wrong house for charity. I said, I moved to the study, opened the drawer Thaddeus had organized with care. Passport, marriage certificate, deed copies, flash drive of records all slid into a folder. A photograph of him laughing on the dock, hair wild in the wind, joined the stack. Valora shadowed me. "You can come back once things are settled." "Things won't settle," I replied. "People do." At the door, Lucien offered again. "We'll wire you something." I looked past him to the dark street. "You'll be careful with what doesn't belong to you." I carried my folder, my sweater, my pride. The keys stayed in my hand. The neighbors would see me leave, but they would also see how I left. Quiet, upright, without begging. Dignity isn't loud, it's the sound of your own door closing on your own terms. The neon sign outside the Sunset Inn blinked like a weary heartbeat, red letters sputtering against the frosted night. I pushed through the glass door into the office, greeted by the sour scent of burnt coffee and lemon cleaner. The clerk barely looked up as I asked for a ground floor room near the camera, one with a deadbolt that worked. He slid a registration card across the counter. I wrote my name slowly, Eudora Mariner, each letter steady, as though handwriting alone might anchor me. I paid with my card for the paper trail, asked for 2 keys, one for my hand and one tucked into my purse. Women my age learn the art of precautions. It isn't paranoia, it's survival. The map showed a corner room under the street lamp. I chose light over quiet, knowing it would cost me sleep but give me safety. I clutched my envelope passport, deed copies, marriage certificate, medication, my proof, and my breath. Walking down the cracked walkway, I whispered to myself, "Lock the door, then your nerves. The order matters when the world gets loud inside." The heater groaned alive as I propped the door with my shoe. Checked the bathroom window latch, then slammed the deadbolt. Old habits from road trips with Thaddeus. I lifted the sheet's corner, peeked behind the headboard, scanned the carpet. The place wasn't clean, but it would do. I stacked my papers on the desk ID. Marriage, home. Finance my life reduced to 4 fragile lanes, pouring water into a plastic cup. I swallowed half a pill for the pounding in my temples. When you can't move mountains, move furniture, I muttered. The small shifts let you breathe. I turned on the television. The late news anchor spoke over a courthouse backdrop. Families fall apart without paper. Always read original copies. My eyes drifted to my stack of documents as if they might answer back. A ticker scrolled by. Mentioning banks I recognized, I jotted down a hotline number for elder fraud. A headline won't save you, I whispered, but it can point to the door you need to knock. I began a list. Call Aldrich Boone. Check county records. Freeze accounts. Through the thin wall came a man's voice. Sharp as a slap. You're useless just like her. A muffled reply followed. Soft, defeated. My chest tightened. Valora's words replayed. Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now. The drywall bounced them back to me. I tapped the envelope twice, counting to 4 before drawing breath, the same way I had steadied myself during chemo years ago. Cruelty echoes, I said to the mirror. Courage absorbs. I turned the desk into a war table. I circled the parcel number on the deed, flagged suspicious transfers, and snapped photos of every page. I wrote in block letters, Aldrich Boone, 900 AM, County Recorder Verify Deed. Bank required dual signatures. Underline twice. No text to Valora. I would not hand her a screenshot to twist. A fresh page went on top, operation paper. First. Write it down like someone else might need to finish it. I thought future me counts as someone else. Finally, I muted the TV and tapped call on Aldrich Boone's emergency number. 1 ring, 2, voicemail rerouted me. Another line clicked, then a measured voice answered. This is Boone's office. State your emergency. My throat didn't shake. This is Eudora Mariner. I said, I need to know what my husband's will actually says. A pause stretched, thin as new ice. Then the voice misses. Mariner. We should meet first thing. I set my pen over the first checkbox. The square waited for ink. I arrived downtown 10 minutes early. Canvas tote biting into my shoulder. Inside it, deed copies. Our marriage certificate, my IDs, bank statements, and the notebook I had named Operation Paper First. Boone's office was a brick building just steps from the courthouse, a flag cracking in the wind above it. The receptionist checked my ID, then handed me a glass of water and a legal pad. I chose a seat facing the exit. Old habits never die, and stared out at a strip of Casco Bay sky. When the paralegal offered to scan my documents, she said, Chain of custody matters. I nodded. Paper leaves, fingerprints. Aldrich Boone emerged, his handshake firm but not crushing. He ushered me into a conference room where the copier hummed like a patient metronome. When your heart wants to argue. I thought, let your papers do it first. We stacked my documents left to right vital records. Property. Banking. Aldrich asked for dates, transfers, who had access. I explained it all, the funeral program erasing my name. The microphone denied. The porch confrontation and the $200 offered as if I were a charity case. He underlined 3 words. Access. Notice. Original. Then he asked, who had the safe key after Thaddeus passed? I did. I answered, until last week. When Valora insisted on helping with documents, the paralegal returned with the scanned packet. Aldrich flipped open the binder and said, let's look at what can't be argued. Timelines don't lie, I reminded myself. They just wait for you to put them in order. He reached for a sealed envelope from his cabinet. The original will, signed and witnessed. He checked the seals, then the initials. Opening to the distribution page, he chuckled under his breath. Did you even read the will? My stomach clenched, but then he clarified, I'm not laughing at you. I'm stunned at their audacity. He read aloud the residence to Eudora Mariner, 70% of financial assets to her, the remainder in trust for Valora conditional. The room felt larger. The copier stopped. leaving silence as punctuation. Aldrich slid the page across the table. This is Thaddeus's signature, witnessed and notarized 6 months ago. Your rights are primary. Some truths don't need volume. Ink already raised them. Then he tapped a paragraph buried in the fine print. Valora's trust was contingent on respectful treatment of her mother following Thaddeus's death. Coercion, displacement, financial exploitation, every word mapped onto last night. If we demonstrate this, Aldrich said, the trust reverts to you in full. He listed evidence, the program omission, the microphone denial, the cash offer, Orlena's witness, Lucien's texts. Respect is a feeling, he added, but dignity is a clause. We drafted steps. First, freeze non-routine transactions. Second, certified letters to Valora and Lucien cease and desist on property access and mail forwarding. Third, affidavits from me and Orlena. Fourth, a recorder's alert on any attempted deed filings. And last, no direct contact, no arguments on porches. Aldrich warned, courts prefer paper to passion. By the time the notices were being sent, my phone lit up, Valora, then Lucien. The preview line read, "We need to talk about the accounts." Aldrich nodded at the buzzing phone. "Let it ring. Their urgency is not your emergency." I stood, tote now heavier with photocopies than when I arrived. The receptionist stepped in. Pale. "Mrs. Mariner. The county recorder is online too. They found something on your parcel file." The Cumberland County Recorder's office smelled of toner and stale air, the kind of place where lives get reduced to paper lines. I stepped inside, parcel slip in one hand, photo ID in the other. The clerk behind the counter, a young man with a tie too tight for his neck, asked for the number. I slid it across, along with my license. His fingers flew across the keyboard, the screen's glow catching in his glasses. The hum of fluorescent lights above made the silence sharper when his brow furrowed. "Mrs. Mariner," he said carefully. "Something unusual was filed last week." My pen clicked in my hand, the way some people draw weapons. I opened my notebook and prepared to write every word. Courthouses don't shout, they whisper, and that's where the real stories hide. He turned the monitor toward me. There, stamped 3 days after Thaddeus's funeral, was a quitclaim deed. It claimed I had signed over my half of the house to Valora. My signature was clumsy. My middle name misspelled by one letter, a forgery that screamed arrogance. A notary stamp sat in the corner, blurred as though someone had copied it crooked. "This stamp," the clerk explained, "doesn't match any commission on file." I pressed my palm flat against the counter. "Print me a certified copy, every page, every seal, and the audit trail who filed it, how it was paid." He scrolled quickly. "Submitted by courier, payment in cash." My breath steadied even as my pulse hammered. "Forgery is cowardice dressed in cursive," I muttered, and signed his request sheet with deliberate clarity. Just then, my phone buzzed. A bank alert glared across the screen. Unusual login attempt detected. Before I could open it, another message came: wire transfer of $50,000 flagged for review. I dialed the bank on speaker. The manager's voice was brisk. The request came through Lucien Veyrock's business account, using joint credentials. Impossible. I answered, my voice a stone. "He doesn't have authority. They froze the transfer," she assured me. "But we'll need your affidavit by end of day." I wrote it all down. 2 fronts now land and money both attacked within 48 hours of burial. Grief is natural. Greed is optional. Back at the counter, I gathered the certified documents, each stamped with the clerk's seal. I marked them chain of custody and initialed every page. The envelope grew heavier, like a weapon made of paper. In the lobby, I called Aldrich Boone. "They filed a forged deed," I said flatly, and Lucien tried to move 50 grand under my name. "Bring everything here," he instructed. "We'll file an injunction today." I breathed once, deep enough to anchor. Justice doesn't reward speed, it rewards precision. When I pushed through the doors, sunlight stabbed across the brick steps. Parked at the curb was Valora's SUV. Lucien sat behind the wheel. Phone lifted like he was filming me. Valora leaned across, her eyes locking on mine through tinted glass. She smirked. Not wide, just enough to say she knew exactly what I had uncovered. I didn't wave. I didn't flinch. I walked to my car, the envelope clutched against my chest. My phone buzzed once more, a text from Valora. "Hope you enjoyed the paperwork. More where that came from." I slid into the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. If she thought ink would undo me, she'd forgotten who taught her to hold a pen. By the time I walked back into Aldrich Boone's office, the stack of certified deeds and bank alerts under my arm felt like armor. The conference table was already covered with injunction drafts, cease and desist letters, and affidavits marked with sticky notes. Aldrich's pen scratched across margins, initials here, signatures there, each page turning my grief into evidence. His paralegal, quick and precise. Confirmed courier pickups and digital service to every address Valora had once used for HOA business. I signed my affidavit line after line, each detail set in ink the funeral program that erased me, the microphone denied, the cash offered as motel money, the porch declaration that I should find somewhere else to die. With every signature, my spine straightened. Aldrich looked up. "Next. We'll make a courtesy call to Detective Cassian Holt. This forgery isn't just civil, it's criminal." The receptionist slipped in quietly. "Valora Drager and Lucienne Veyrac are in the lobby. They say it's urgent." Aldrich didn't hesitate. "Let them in. We'll keep it professional." He slid the evidence packet into the center of the table like a chess piece placed for check. Valora entered first, sleek in black, every movement a performance. Lucienne followed, phone already in hand, thumbs ready to edit reality. "Mom, this is unnecessary," she began. "We're just securing Dad's legacy." "You're securing something that isn't yours," I answered, my chin lifting the way New England women do when they've carried storms on their backs. Aldrich dialed Cassian Holt and tapped speaker. "Detective, this is Boone. I'm here with my client Eudora Mariner. Valora and Lucienne are present." Cassian's voice filled the room, steady, unhurried. "We have an active forgery investigation. A fraudulent quitclaim deed with an invalid notary commission was filed. We've also logged an attempted unauthorized transfer flagged by a bank." Valora stiffened. "You're making a mistake, ma'am," Cassian replied. "Any interference with assets or intimidation may add charges. I recommend no access to the residence and no financial actions pending verification." Aldrich slid the forged deed copy across the table. I folded my hands in my lap. "No theater. Just facts." "Detective, we'll cooperate," I said evenly. "That cooperation is noted, Mrs. Mariner," Cassian answered. Then ended the call. The silence afterward was almost holy, just paper shuffling, and Valora's breathing sharp in her throat. Lucian angled his phone beneath the table, trying to record. Aldrich caught it with one glance. "Please put that away," he said, jotting a note as if already preparing the motion. Valora reached for the deed copy, but Aldrich tapped the header. Exhibit 1. Certified. She withdrew her hand, then Valora's phone pinged. Lucienne's screen lit with a preview of her own post from the night before, a photo of her standing in front of my house. Captioned, "Finally home. Daddy's legacy is safe with me." Aldrich didn't smile, but his eyes sharpened. "Please forward that link." He took a screenshot. Timestamp, geotag, and comment trail. A neighbor had written, "Thought that was Eudora's place." Valora had replied, "It's ours now." Aldrich murmured, "That's admission, Exhibit 2. "That's private," Valora snapped. "No," Aldrich said smoothly. "You made it public." His paralegal confirmed the injunction was already e-filed, receipts pinging one by one. Banks, recorder, utilities all served. Aldrich handed Valora a printed cease and desist and a copy of the contingent clause. The words, "respectful treatment," highlighted in yellow. Lucienne muttered, "This is a misunderstanding." I stacked my copy set, date signed on top. "No," I replied, my voice even. "It's documented." At the doorway, Valora leaned close enough to let the venom show. "You'll regret this." "I regret not doing it sooner," I answered, steady as stone. My phone buzzed before the door closed. A short text from Cassian Holt: "Warrant applications in motion. Do not return home alone." I met Aldrich's eyes. He nodded once. The game had changed. Aldrich closed the blinds in his conference room, shutting out the city's glare. On the polished table sat a small USB drive in Thaddeus's familiar handwriting. My husband always labeled things. Down to jars of screws in his workbench order was his language of love. Aldrich explained the provenance sealed with the will. Notarized, witnessed, cataloged. He logged the serial number before sliding it into the computer. I folded my hands and told myself to listen, not as a widow aching for comfort, but as a woman, collecting evidence. The screen flickered to life, and a timestamp blinked across the bottom. Then his face appeared. Thaddeus, tie loosened, eyes steady, Eudora. If you're watching this, I'm not there to absorb the hard edges for you. His voice filled the room, deep and measured, a sound I thought I'd lost forever. He spoke plainly the house and 70% of assets to me. A conditional trust to Valora dependent on her treatment of me after his death. He anticipated the game's forged authority. Pressure to vacate, utilities switched, mail forwarded. It was last night retold by a man already gone. If Valora chooses leverage over love, let the claws choose for me, he said. I pressed my palm flat on the table, whispering, I hear you. Aldrich rewound the sentence, choose love over leverage, circling it for emphasis. I realized then that grief needs a handrail, and facts will do. Aldrich documented the hash code, printed excerpts, and drafted a declaration of authenticity. He texted Detective Cassian Holt posthumous statement consistent with known facts. Hash attached. Cassian's reply came quick. Keep original sealed. We'll mirror it at the station. I signed a supplemental affidavit confirming voice, date, and mannerisms. Love had written the letter. The law would deliver it. I phoned Orlena Pike. She answered before the first ring finished. Tell me when and where, she said, her voice steady as a porch light in winter. We met at her porch, tote still slung over her shoulder. She described what she'd seen Lucienne's hand slipping 200s into mine. Valora's smile for the neighbors, the performance of control. She remembered words exactly. We've got it handled. She remembered the time. 7:42, the porch light on, the hum of commercial street traffic, at the police substation. Orlena read her statement aloud, corrected one detail about the weather, initialed it and signed. An officer witnessed and stamped it. Decency has a sound. I thought, it's a neighbor saying, I saw it and I'll stand up with you. Back in Aldrich's car, harbor cranes bent like punctuation marks against the darkening sky. Aldrich forwarded Orlena's statement to Cassian Holt. The reply, supplemental charges under review, elder exploitation, forgery, attempted wire fraud. My phone buzzed again, an Instagram screenshot, Valora on my porch, captioned, we're restoring what was meant to be. I didn't reply. Aldrich documented the timestamp and attached it to the packet. We finalized tomorrow's plan, meet the bank manager at 10, with Cassian present for security. I exhaled. Not triumph, but oxygen, like a swimmer breaking the surface after a long dive. Respect yourself in silence, I reminded myself. Let the paper do the talking in public. Cassian called again. We've got enough for warrants by morning. Do not meet anyone alone. Aldrich emailed the branch manager, requesting a security room with cameras active. I texted Orlena a quiet thank you. She replied with a heart and, leave the porch light on for yourself this time. I capped my pen, tucked Thaddeus's USB into a labeled envelope, and slid it into Aldrich's safe. Outside. The wind off the bay snapped the flags. Tomorrow already had a shape. At 10 sharp. Aldrich and I stepped through the glass doors of Harbor Trust. Cassian Holt met us just inside, his badge discreet but visible. The branch manager ushered us down a quiet hallway into a security room where the hum of fluorescent lights sounded like a drum roll. On the table, Aldrich spread our arsenal forged quitclaim deed, Instagram screenshot, Orlena's sworn statement, Thaddeus's video transcript. Cassian confirmed the case number and no access orders already logged with the county. The manager glanced at the ceiling camera and nodded. Aldrich requested dual authorization across all accounts. I signed the acknowledgments, each page a nail driven into a coffin of fraud. The manager keyed an alert to the teller line any large transactions from Valora Drager or Lucien Veyrac would be stopped. Through the glass wall, I saw them approach the counter. Valora slid a cashier's check form forward, her nails clicking against the laminate. Lucienne leaned in, murmuring instructions. The teller typed, paused, then summoned a supervisor. The chime overhead echoed like a gavel. The supervisor's voice was calm but final. "These funds are restricted pending legal review. No withdrawal today?" Valora's face drained. Lucienne puffed up, spitting jargon about stewardship and authorized signatures. Cashin cracked open the security room door so they could see us inside. He introduced himself formally, outlining the active investigation. I stepped forward just enough for my reflection to catch in the glass. "Your urgency," I said, "is not my emergency." Phones in line lifted like periscopes. By the time the supervisor returned with their paperwork, the word declined was stamped bold in red. Reputation flees faster than money ever does. Lucian tried one more spin, tossing out phrases like liquidity event and interim custody. Aldrich countered in plain English fraud, forgery, elder exploitation. Valora turned toward me with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Mom, let's not make a scene." I gestured to the stamped forms. The scene made itself. Cassian handed them printed no contact orders and logged their acknowledgement. Valora hissed, "You'll regret this." I met her eyes. "I regret ever letting you think I wouldn't fight." By late afternoon, we were back at my house in Back Cove. A locksmith's van idled out front while Aldrich supervised the wreckying. Cassian photographed the old locks before sealing them in a bag. Orlena waved from her porch. I waved back, this time with a smile that wasn't forced. Utilities were reset in my name, the false mail forwarding canceled. I walked through each room with a checklist. On the mantel, I set the funeral program that had erased my name. Evidence turned emblem. Coming home, I thought, is a verb, not an address. Dusk leaned in when Valora appeared at the walkway. Coat loose, mascara slipping. "Mom, please," she began, trying on a softer tone. "Kevin's office is asking questions." The kids I held a certified letter in my hand, notice of trust reversion, triggered by her own conduct. "Your father wrote this clause for days like yesterday." She reached toward the threshold, but I stepped back. "Respect is entry," I said, "and you brought none." I set a box of her things on the porch, receipts taped neatly on top. "You won't be billed for what isn't yours." Her last plea, "We're family." My answer, family protects. DNA is a detail. I closed the door gently. The latch clicked like a signature. That night, I brewed tea in the quiet kitchen while Aldrich emailed updates and Cassian texted, "Proceed safely." I opened a fresh folder. Mariner Foundation Elder Justice. Thaddeus's photo went on the wall, his words carved beneath, "Choose love over leverage." My phone buzzed once more. Certified mail court hearing date stamped bold. I let the kettle whistle. Some music. I decided, you don't rush.